Welcome, everyone. We know people are still trickling in, but we're going to go ahead and get started with our April version of our secondary science of reading learning community, focusing on fluent and strategic readers and a multi-tiered system of supports. Now, I will say that we had a lot of conversation about strategic because I had from the lens, and I think many of us did as we were creating this outline, that we meant readers who are strategic in their reading. And we realized that we need to be careful with our wording because sometimes if we're thinking about levels of support students need, there may be intensive or there may be strategic support. So in this case, we're talking about readers who use strategies. And Effie, do you want to add anything on? Or there we go. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, just that being clear that we are talking about those strategies that we use as readers.
While you're starting on these introductory slides, I just put up a poll asking if anyone's new with us today. If you want to go through, we have just an introductory welcome slide with a quote from Louisa Moats. Speaking about older poor readers, and how they can learn to read if they are taught the foundation language skills they missed and have the ample opportunity to apply those skills in meaningful text reading. And I would also argue meaningful text writing, because I'm saying all the time, we teach reading through writing. We do have a couple new people, Effie, just to let you know.
I saw that. Welcome.
Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next one. All right, so we'll just start with tribal land acknowledgement, recognizing and respecting and affirming the tribal sovereignty of those lands and acknowledging the importance of school district connections with their neighboring tribes and their services. And I will go to this and grab the Native Links Land CA for you so that you can access and find out on the lands where you are or any other additional information. Oh, it's not letting me. I have to type that in for us. Anything you would like to
Is
add?
it the one at the bottom of in the notes?
Oh, I didn't see it in the notes. Yes, if it's in there. Oh, I need to make it bigger. No, but that's a resource that we found on Native Ways of Knowing. Did you grab that, Effie? Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, I grabbed that one.
And we invite everyone to always add in their own. And we also recognize that acknowledgement does not stand in for responsibilities and relationships, but it is a place to start. We don't have our OSPI partners with us today. So Effie, I just want to invite you. Is there anything you would like to draw our attention to in their equity statement?
Just an overall awareness. I know many of you have been with us before when Heidi specifically has shared this, but that it is there. That it's if it's something your district does not have and you would like to get some examples, that this OSPI statement is there. And I see some highlighting of words. Are you doing that?
I am, because I'm looking
Nice.
at the action here.
Yeah.
That we wanted to examine those policies. We wanted to
Develop.
develop an understanding of historical context.
Mhm.
We'd want to engage students, families, and representatives, and actively dismantle systemic barriers. Just noticing some of the verbs.
Verbs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when we pull apart standards, pull and look for the verbs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do? Thanks
for that, Effie. And this came also from our friends with OSPI, originally because of the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, et cetera, say their names. But I think it's important to keep it back in mind, these recognitions that there has been such an effect of the trauma from over 400 years of racism in the United States. And I think it's important that we pledge to stand with our communities of color, especially those who identify as and or are categorized as African American. It's a recognition also of the intersectionality of those who identify both as persons of color and individuals with disabilities. And it's a pledge to center our work to dismantling systemic racism and disrupt ableist structures.
So the Washington State MTSS model is displayed here. So this is on the website and the OSPI website. And then just making sure that there's that understanding that all of these pieces create the MTSS system, because in many cases it ends up being the triangle, and that continuum of supports is what everybody focuses on. And really in the beginning, that's kind of how it felt when RTI was rolled out many years ago. And as we've moved to MTSS and understanding that it's all of those pieces and all of these circles are of equal value, equal size, the team-driven leadership, shared leadership, data-based decision-making, family, student, and community engagement, and the continuum of supports, and the evidence-based practices and how they all work together. And in keeping that in mind as we're talking about our students, keeping that in mind of where we are with supports through the system. There's another slide that shows the continuum of supports actually in a different model. So if you haven't seen that, I'm going to go ahead and share that. But just know our state is doing a lot of work with MTSS implementation, and in the 6162 dyslexia legislation, it's called out for K2 that buildings will be using those MTSS frameworks. And just there's support out there. If your district or your school and you think this is new, we're not working on this, just reach out to us and we can connect you with somebody. I have 2 people at my ESD in Vancouver that support the work around MTSS. And we also have some statewide folks, and every ESD has people that can provide support.
Thank you, Effie. I appreciate that.
Oh, I notice we don't have the.
But this is what connects with it
Okay.
is, I mean, we talk so much about the simple view of reading, and we see this as the simple view of MTSS, in that you need both the symptoms and the structures and the instruction and curriculum in order to have a tiered system that works and meets the needs of everyone. And notice that multiplication equation piece. I think that that's a really crucial piece to think about, that we need to think about all the pieces and players and those moving parts within that system and the structure, as well as our routines, our differentiated instruction, the components of literacy, the systematic, explicit, evidence-based curriculum, and the specific interventions, so that we're all working together on that. And these are some
there you are.
for you.
There's your support folks. The region that we call them the RICs, the RICs, the regional implementation coordinators for MTSS, the regional literacy coordinators. That's my role in Vancouver. And then all educators.
The RLCs too. Everyone working together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are ours. We work together. I think I saw them yesterday called agreements. We used to call these norms. And I think it's an important reminder for us as we work together and how we talk to each other. So recognizing that it's important for us to be engaged and so that we are supporting each other's learning. And as we learn together, it's important that we listen with open hearts and we speak with open hearts, because if we don't, if someone doesn't share, then I can't learn from you. And so please do open and talk about your experiences, your reflections, your connections, because those are crucial for us in our collective learning together. Along the bottom, the expect and accept non-closure is because this is lifelong journey this is where we talk about growth mindset and continually learning and that professional learning that we're doing together, that there's always more to learn. And so that's the non-closure piece for me, is that there's more that we can continue learning on. And then of course the technology, you'll see me underlining and highlighting. I love that Effie is driving today. But it's also then giving ourselves and each other grace. So she's driving because I'm in a hotel up in Tacoma for an event. And we all know that hopefully there's nobody coming in from your car, but that does happen sometimes. And if you are, please just be careful and try not to try not to pay attention to us too much, or at least at the expense of the road. If anything you want to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay, go ahead into the Zoom tips. We do ask that, and if you want to click through, there are animations here. There are things that we request. One is that you rename yourself with your name and your district, especially if you're with Battleground, because there has been a request to have all the Battleground people together. And if there was another district that wants to do that as well, please let me know, and I'll make sure that we put you into the breakout rooms accordingly. So to do that, if you just click on the participants like you see circled there, and you go to next to your name, you see where it says more, and then one of the options is to rename. You can keep going, Effie.
Okay.
The video on is a request. It's not a mandate, but it is helpful for us to get the nonverbal feedback. So that's always appreciated. She's highlighted the mute option for unmuting. Everyone is muted upon entry, and so that there's no background noise. But if you have no background noise, go ahead and keep that unmuted. That's fine, so you can be a part of the conversation. And unmute anytime, as well as raise your hand. So Effie just put the arrow onto the raise hand option that's found under reactions. And if you do raise your hand, just letting you know, these the hand raising, Effie or I can lower. And these parts, the emoji things will kind of disappear on their own. But if you use these in the middle row, you have to unclick them. We can't do that and they won't go away. So that's the communication icons. What I'm doing right now, you've been seeing me annotate. That's found via the view options. We're up at the top of the screen where it says you are viewing Effie's screen. There's the view options next to it where you can put us at the top or along the side, or slide the slide deck more or less. That's also where the annotations are found. When you click that, you'll get this toolbar and where you can draw or stamp. And if you use this format button here, that will change the color of whatever you are using. I think that's our tour.
Yep.
These are ways that we'll be engaging with each other. There is this little icon. Oh, go ahead and jump in. Do we have Nina to lead us through our welcome and warm up activity? I was just going to say this icon here, it will kind of indicate to us an opportunity to engage. So whether it's be through breakout, through chat, through Jamboard, something to kind of get you doing something, is that active engagement, which we all know is so crucial.
I don't see Nina.
Okay, we'll keep going until we do.
So,
Thanks, Leah.
okay. So we, Nina found this for us, and I just kind of looking here and thinking about which of these represents how you are feeling today, I think is what it is. I'm looking at, because I think it's 7, 1, 2, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Pay attention to the numbering, because my brain automatically went from left to right. And then I was like 1, 4, 7, 10. So that's not right. So are you feeling like a firecracker? Are you the king cone? There's lots of, and you can annotate or put it in the chat, either one. Oh, I like somebody, there's different ones. Are you feeling, ooh, I think I'm gonna have to go with.
So you could put a number in the chat, or you could put, so let's see, we have a number 8 in the chat. I'll annotate these. We have a 1. I put the Tweety because I think I'm awfully sunshiny today. Someone has a number 6. You're right, these are awfully awkward with the numbering. We have a 12. I hope that it's like king cone, makes you feel really strong, right? Another 8 and 11. I'd be curious what's behind that one, Mark. Which one did you say you are, Effie?
5. I'm feeling sandwiched between a lot of things.
It's a fun way to get things going.
Okay. It doesn't look like we have many screwballs, so that is good.
Awesome.
If you had a picture of a Goodyear blimp, it's still right. So, anyway, thank you for participating.
I'll go ahead and clear up.
Those strawberry eclair ones are kind of interesting. They have in the vending machines, and you find that little surprise inside of flavor.
All right, I cleared everything off for us to move on.
Okay, next. Oh, I have to stop annotating. Sorry.
That's the trick, that getting to the mouse and getting to the.
Oops.
Mhm.
Too fast. Okay, here we are.
All right, so I'm the first one on the left. So I'll start. For those who are new to us today, welcome. I'm Alicia Roberts Frank. I'm the one with the flowers. My daughter took that actually. And I'm a regional, hi Nina, I'll help you out. I'm a regional administrator for special programs in ESD 113, which means that I do professional development, both free classes like this and paid classes, and districts call me and say, hey, can you come and do professional development? Mainly around special education, but even under that, more specifically around dyslexia. I have taught elementary, middle, high, and teachers becoming teachers in teacher prep programs. And I also have kids, both my own kids are both middle schoolers now, and one has dyslexia and one has autism. So I've been on both sides of the IEP table and the 504 table, and I come with those different hats. I think our next picture is Nina. Welcome.
Hi, perfect timing. Actually came in for the ice cream part, but I couldn't get my video to start. So I was like, no, I want to say. I'm just noticed I'm wearing the same sweater in my picture. So that's fun. Not awkward at all. I'm Nina Sotomayor Andrew. I am one of the literacy support specialists. I am a professional learning coach. I have been a instructional coach. I've worn many, many hats. I've been a reading teacher, middle school, love that, it's my jam. And currently I'm supporting ESD 114. So I'm very excited to support this work around the science of reading and all of this work with secondary. So welcome everybody.
Thank you. Effie, so we have Heidi with us. She's from ESD. Help me out. You take it, Effie.
I am Effie Trial. I am at the bottom next to Nina, and I'm looking a little possessed in that selfie with my daughter. So that was actually 4th of July at our neighbor's house. And she is just turned 17 and is a junior in high school. So I come to you from Vancouver, Washington. I was an employee, teacher, and instructional coach, and a variety of program positions with Vancouver Public Schools for about 13 years. And in 2014 came to the ESD as the regional literacy coordinator and work on all kinds of projects with literacy and Teacher of the Year and Title I. And then statewide work as well. So it's fun to plan these sessions jointly with the colleagues across the state. And then we have on our board here, who are part of our planning and team throughout the year, if you've been here with us, is Heidi. And Heidi works for OSPI as secondary. Alicia, do you know her exact title?
Secondary Assistant Director, ELA.
ELA.
Assistant or associate, I think associate.
And then we have Elizabeth Hamming, who is at ESD 189 in Anacortes, and she is the regional literacy coordinator. So same position I have up in that area. So for those of you that don't know, every ESD has a regional literacy coordinator, and then we have some plus folks like Alicia and Nina that add to our work and work with us and the team. But everyone has an identified literacy coordinator at each of the 9 ESDs, and we work very collaboratively. We're a very, being statewide, we're a very close-knit team that supports each other.
Definitely. Okay, and for the next slide, I added in a Jamboard for you. where you can add, if you haven't already, your name, your role, your grade level, your content area, so that we can kind of get to know each other a little bit, who's who in the room. And if you have already put that on, you could just put a little kind of chat. Oh, did that not work for me? Was that not the right link? Did it work? I'm testing that. It didn't work. Let me try a different link for you. It is at the top of our resource, so hopefully you got that one already. Jamboard for all sessions. And okay. So let me grab it. That one did work, so I'll grab that and make sure I put it in. And I'll make sure that everyone has access. Anyone with the link is an editor, so I'll put that in for us. Particularly those of you who are new, please put something in and let us know where you're joining from. Thanks, Janet. Okay. All right. That can keep going as we continue on. Effie, you want to talk about the series?
So here we are, and some of you have been to previous sessions, and it is built that way. People can come to whatever they are able to come to. So you see back in September, we started with standards and assessments. I feel like we all had an August one maybe, but that we kicked off with, but text. Yeah, I thought so. We had an
It was
August
just an introductory and it was
Mhm.
optional, not, yeah.
And then standards and assessment, so text choices. In November, building awareness of the science of reading and structured literacy, which is completely an ongoing process. It's like that whole piece with non-closure. So that has been woven through all of these sessions and a very important part. So that was just building the awareness of getting us going into all of the pieces that tie with it. Decoding and encoding, supporting language comprehension. The reading and writing connection was last month, and here we are in April. Hard to believe, putting it all together. And as we talked about, fluent and strategic readers being readers who are strategic in the strategies they use. And then next month will be tools and strategies for instructors. So we've already started planning that session.
And it's astonishing when you should put it this way. We've done a lot, haven't we? It's been a fun journey with everyone. Somebody asked about the attendance. I'm putting that in again for you, as well as the resource link. Yes, there is. They're both of them in there.
Okay, so as is good practice with what we do with students, we have tried to really keep things consistent. So the topics change, but the consistency of the format is there for you. So the review, reflect, and connect is the first part, new learning and resources, practice for application, and then closure and next steps. So in the review, reflect, and connect, it'll be parts of the last session specifically, and then moving forward. So here we are with review, reflect, and connect. We've already done some connecting, but this is connecting to our work.
Okay. Let me try that again. Okay. All right. So, Nina, since you need to leave early, would you like to take some parts of these, or do you want me to just keep going?
I'll pop in. Just
Okay.
go ahead and
We'll do it
start. And
together.
you know me. I'll just.
Okay. These were some of the things that we were talking about last time. So I'm going to take this section, then Effie will do the main part of the learning today. So in this section, we were talking last time about language comprehension and really starting to focus on that reading rope and the upper strands of the reading rope. And actually I was at an activity today where we made the reading rope out of pipe cleaners. But you can see what highlighted, and I highlighted in green, the syntax and then the genres. Those were two areas that we were focusing on. Remembering the role of the simple view of reading, though, that we are always working on our language comprehension, at the same time making sure our students have the skills they need in their word reading so that they're able to access their learning independently. Go ahead, Effie. And I'm realizing I'm going to take off my background too, because I talk with my hands. So when we talked about syntax, these were some of the pieces we were looking at, is understanding the relationships among words, phrases, clauses, and sentences. It's the reference, it's the cohesion, it's how these work together. They showed a passage today that had very complex syntax and a lot of vocabulary that was very hard for us all. And we had to think about, for example, there was one pronoun and we're like, wait, what? It seemed very general until we got to the pronoun. And so it's helping us understand those questions about text when we think about those adverbial phrases, words and phrases that answer those questions in blue, the who, where, when, how much. The where, when, how much, or the noun phrases, those ones in green, the who or what. It's usually the subject of our sentence. Your verb phrases in red, it did what, doing what, what's it about, the linking verb phrases. Your adjectival phrases in orange there that answer the questions, what kind, how many. So helping our kids realize that when we talk about grammar, it's not just to talk about grammar, it's to understand language and understand how these words work together to answer questions, because that's it's giving you information in your text as you're reading. Go ahead, Effie. Trying to get my background.
I like that you just said that grammar isn't just about grammar, it's about understanding the text. I think that I just was sitting here kind of reflecting on that and how important that is, to think about it that way. So,
and it makes me think about an activity I used to do with my students. Now, this is different than written text. We would use pictures and we would hold up a picture and we would say, who is doing it? What are they doing it to? And so the kids would get used to answering those types of questions and thinking about the pronouns and using those type of grammatical words correctly in their responses, and then applying that to text.
Excellent. So, yes, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So the next slide, and this comes actually from Margie Gillis, and I'm going to put a link into the chat box with the source for it in case you weren't with us last month. And Margie Gillis does a lot about grammar and syntax, but grammar. And I really love where she says this is the bridge between reading fluency and text comprehension, because word reading fluency, that gets you to those individual words. But when you start thinking about how those words work together, that's where you can get the prosody, is instead of reading word by word, you group them into phrases that make sense. And that's what constructs meaning. That's what, that if you just say a girl little, that doesn't have any meaning, but a little girl, that has meaning to it. So the order matters, how these words work together. And we pause there. A little girl was sitting over on the table or next to the table, so you group them, because then was sitting is telling what she was doing. Next to the table tells me where, because she was sad tells me why. So you can see all the different, going back to those questions that we answer. So I just like this image to help us see that link and when how grammar and syntax connects, going from individual word reading to understanding meaning through our reading. Okay. So as we talked about, going beyond the word level, we talked about phrases on the next one, Effie, unless you have anything you wanted to add.
No, it's okay. Good. Oh, that's not my arrow on there. There you go.
There we go. Is looking beyond the word level to the phrase level. You've heard me talking about noun, verbs, and the adjectival phrases and adverbial phrases, which are always prepositionals. So if I said in a back and forth way, or in a strange way, that's, even though it's that's what we think of normally as telling where, it would be telling us how. Those are both adverbial phrase. Or if I said the girl in the blue coat is telling me about the girl. So it's an adjectival use of that prepositional phrase. So notice those prepositional phrases could be adjectives or adverbs, depending if it's answering the question about a noun or if it's answering questions about the action. So we talked about clauses, they can be either dependent or independent, as well as thinking about the complexities of sentences and the different kinds of text. Again, because we teach reading through writing, the more we understand, let's develop it and build it so that we can understand it when we're reading it. Colleagues, any other additions? We're just reviewing so that we can go into chats to talk to each other about it. This one was one regarding, this came from WIDA. And Effie, I think this is more something that you could talk about than I, but this was talking about, again, beyond different kinds of narratives or different kinds of, not narratives isn't the word, text.
So yeah, looking at, and this, I've been working through, the writing rope and the writing revolution, and then looking at WIDA. And those of you that are familiar with WIDA, and that's our multilingual assessment and standards for multilingual learners that the state of Washington adopted. Many states have it, and we are in, I think, year 2, maybe it's been 2 to 3. Work in progress to learn more about it. So thinking about that and thinking about the explicit instruction for our multilingual learners and tying it then where it says CCSS writing standard 1, so our standard writing run, and then aligning it to the different ways of breaking it apart. You're arguing with your or in younger grades, we I believe it's opinion, and then in older more advanced grades, it's argue. Evidence, reasoning, so possibly that counterclaim, and conclusion. Thinking about how we would use that in what content areas. So in science, specifically is what comes to mind for me. I'm deep into a child taking an AP biology assessment soon, so this has been on my mind. And then introduction, inform and explain, giving just those breaking it down there with writing 2. And then we all are familiar with narratives with our beginning, middle, and end. So it's a simplified way of looking at it here.
And Effie, I like the idea you have of like, how do we think about introducing this into other content areas as well? So like even social studies, I was in a social studies class today where they did philosophical chairs. And so just thinking about evidence and reasoning and coming up with counterclaim and how that can help support even that activity. And then the students can utilize that new information and apply it to their writing activity. So just like different ways that teachers can engage students in writing as well.
And so sometimes I think, with like you just said, social studies, it might be a situation where you're informing and explaining, but there might be other times that you, like you said, you have a claim and you're giving the reasoning, and there's so much to think about and discuss in social studies that would lend itself to that kind of writing, as opposed to these are just what we see as the facts and details, because now we know not everything we read is a true fact. So took us a while to get there. We got there.
Thanks.
Okay.
We have 2 more on different kinds of texts or text structures. And so again, we had kind of like Effie had shared on the last one, does it describe, does it show sequences, does it show a problem and a solution, does it compare and contrast, does it show a cause and effect? And what I like about this is what are the signal words, so you can help your kids look for and recognize that if what it's trying to tell you through some of these clues in the signal words. And I like how the graph has some associated graphic organizers, and we do have a link on that I can add into the chat box. But all the links that we shared during our session are also on our resource guide that we gave to you.
I can do it.
Oh, perfect.
And using these during small groups or differentiated instructional time is really great, as well as whole group. So teaching kids to use these themselves and then having them integrate this into their own projects or things like that can be really helpful.
So today when I was at, we kicked off this SIOP this week, capacity builder training for multilingual instructors. And I used, Alicia, what I always say, I live my life in a Venn diagram. I am going to, that will be the title of my book, unless it's copyrighted or on my tombstone. So one or the other or both. Compare and contrast, looking for all those things. So I see Venn diagrams and I get really excited because it's like, where is the overlap? Where can I take two things and make them find those similarities? So thinking about these different, I love a graphic organizer. And I'm one of those teachers that loved them so much. It took me a little while to realize that wasn't the end product, that we had to then process that and take it into an actual writing passage. So comparing frogs and toads, my first year of teaching second grade, wasn't the end product. So it's a journey.
But it taught you more about frogs and toads.
It does.
Excuse me. Okay, we have one more on those and for us to review before we get into our first breakout. And that was just another source we found on looking at different kinds of text types as being either informational or opinion argument or a narrative. And the link that I'm putting into the chat for you went into more than just examples. It talked a little bit about it, but I thought that this was really what we wanted to focus on, is understanding the types of things that your kids would be reading or writing that has information, and that's their goal. It's to learn something, which is most of our learning, isn't it? But also for our kids to recognize, particularly now as we try to help them recognize what is an opinion or an argument versus what is informational, as we think about what is fact and what is opinion, what is an argument, what is the persuasive. These are claims, these are not objective. So I think about the real importance as we help our kids differentiate between those two. And then the narrative, of course, is the other, the more enjoyable for some of us. The fable and myth, most of our fictional information comes from our narratives as well. Of course, some of the diary entries, and it might be from that version, could be informational, but giving it through a narrative style. And some of these may be overlapping. Okay, so those were the things we talked about last time. We want to give you an opportunity of, Effie, I keep forgetting to update this part. So we're going to change this to, instead of what have you done about, let me highlight this. No, but it's what have you done or thought about. I love how you're actually trying to fix it in the moment. You're cute. Instead of vocabulary or morphology and background knowledge, we're talking about fluency and text types. So I'm going to pause our recording and open up our breakout rooms for you in a moment. But we're just going to give you an opportunity just to share, connect, and discuss. This is a reflection opportunity. So, all right. So I hit resume recording. So let's hear from some of the breakout rooms. What were some of the things you all talked about as we reflected upon last month's learning? Hopefully you all chose a representative. I should have reminded you before you went into your rooms. Or you can now say not it or turn to
Tammy shared with our group what she's doing with her 8th graders, which is and how she's using the Orton Gillingham with her 8th graders, and how she's broken it down. And I probably want to talk to her more, like, so it's not so kindergarten, how, and the success she's had with one student in particular who went from 1st grade to 2nd grade level. As an 8th grader, had only ever made it to 1st grade, and in less than a year made it to mid 2nd grade. So it's a conversation I want to continue.
Thank you, Stacy. That's fantastic, Tammy. Congratulations. I agree with you. When I went from teaching elementary, I used a Slingerland, which is an OG-based program at an elementary school, and then went to middle school and then high school. I made tweaks on how I did it. I mean, I went through the same kind of approach or some of the concepts, but massaged it a bit. I'd love to get them to talk about how you do that with the OG. How about someone
Well,
else? Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important going off that, like, even though he's obviously not like, like can read proficiently, like, a high schooler that's like a proficient reader, still like just like acknowledge and recognize like those small steps and those small successes, because over time it'll build up. And I mean, hopefully it'll get to the point of being like, like a proficient high school reader, but like really celebrate those small steps to have him get there eventually.
Thank you, Leah.
That was it. I'm sorry, guys. Now you can't even see my name or my district. on
Actually,
the
we
screen.
can. We
You
can.
can weird because I can't. All I see is everyone else.
Oh, we always say technology is great until it's not.
Yeah. Okay. I'll mute myself.
All right. So how about either our friends at Battleground or one of the other two rooms?
I can share from our room. So it's Stephanie and Janet, and they're both special ed teacher, math and English special ed teachers, and we're talking about helping students improve their reading within the content area that they're doing, and because we don't have time to pull it out for extra instruction, or it's an inclusive setting. So just thinking of kind of challenges and ideas there. And I don't know if maybe our facilitators are aware, but I also shared this great course that they do twice a year at Achieve the Core. And it's called Improving Reading for older readers. I can put the link to it. It's not, I'll put the link to it in the chat.
Thank you.
It's not available right now. They usually open it up in the fall and in the spring, but it's really good, and it's really focused on helping kids build those reading skills that they may have missed and improve their fluency within a content area class. So it's worth it. It's an online.
I was going to ask if it's free, but it's only $20 per person. That's not
it costs, but not very much. Yeah.
That's pretty nice. No, thank
Yeah,
you.
it's really
Thank
good.
you.
I recommend it.
Effie, you were starting to say, did you know about that?
No, I did not. I said, just was saying thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Sharing that.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. Is there one more group who would like to share out? This is definitely what this is all about, Linda. Share resources, share ideas. I mean, I think you were saying that people in your group were talking about some strategies that they do. Let's add it in, add it into the chat, add it onto the Jamboard. Let's share out so that we are learning from each other and with each other. All righty, I think Effie, we're ready to move on, and people can correct me if I'm wrong about that. Oh, we
Here
don't.
we are.
I think we're embedding these into our breakouts now, but if we need to stand and stretch, we can make sure everyone takes a moment for that. I'll put the attendance link back in the chat box for everyone.
So just take a minute and stretch. That cat looks just like my Gracie.
All right.
Claws and all.
All right.
And then reminder, when we do the next breakout, take a little break. We'll look at our time and see what time we have to add that in, but we will do that.
I think we're really on track. We can take a moment if we need to.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at the rope, which should be very familiar at this point in time if you've been with us, and hopefully if you haven't, this is something you have seen before. So Scarborough's rope, it doesn't actually say Scarborough's rope on here, but we have the the link here that we can put in here and send out. So our friendly rope, and thinking about all these areas under language comprehension up here and word recognition about the specifics of the decoding and the actual sounds and breaking down the words, and thinking about this, because sometimes I know we think about language and with speaking, but this is really about what it takes to read the words and increasingly automatic, making it more automatic. And here is that word strategic that we were talking about with the title of this session. So taking all these pieces, and Alicia went over the language and structure from the last session, thinking about vocabulary and from previous sessions, and see how it's all building together. And we are looking at all of it to tie to our standards, or we see print concepts, tie to our language, which in the work I'm working on specifically around multilingual learners, and presenting at Wabe this weekend on working with language learners, and thinking about the rope and all the pieces that go with it. And then where we are here, we have highlighted our skilled reading and our goals around the fluent execution and coordination of word recognition and text comprehension. So it's that automaticity of seeing a word, recognizing it, and understanding it all together. Okay, so thinking about fluency and thinking about the fact that it is complex. Sometimes we simplify it because it is one of our easiest areas to measure with timers and the marks we can make on it. It's much easier to assess than comprehension. So sometimes it gets simplified, but it actually is a fairly complex task. So reasonably accurate reading at an appropriate rate with suitable expression that leads to accurate and deep comprehension and motivation to read. So tying that complexity of reading fluency to comprehension and motivation. So thinking about how accurate is accurate enough, and considering content standards and thinking about the demands of our content, and then thinking about our what we would call, if you're familiar with the program with Read Naturally, we called a cold read, and then then we'd have the reads after that were warm and hot reads. That what are those first reads and the second reads, and then those practice to develop that fluency that is more than just reading with speed correctly.
When you and that's when you say appropriate rate, I think so much about automaticity. It's like you don't want to go too fast, you don't want to go too slow. You want just automatic enough that you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're just paying attention to instead the content instead of the action of actually reading. And since we planned for this, I just remembered as I heard you talking about what's accurate, it's accurate enough. I did find I'm actually looking for here we go, an image that really, I feel like this is something I've been wanting, and I don't know if we've shared this before or not, but I'm going to take over sharing for just a second, when I pull up this image, that really is good food for thought on how accurate is accurate enough. And so
Do I need to stop share, or can you just?
I think I'll be able to just take over. Let me get to that image. Here it is. It's this one. And hopefully it will be big enough for us to see clearly. I am on one screen, so give me a moment. Thanks, Allison. I'll make sure you get into the battleground room. Okay, let's hope this is on the right thing here. Oh, look at that. Okay, that worked. So notice that the passage on the top is where you have 20% of the words omitted. And the bottom is only 5% of the words omitted. But look at which ones are reading. So Tammy, you just said that 96 or above, but even at 95 above, which you see in the bottom ones, depending on which words you don't understand, you could still struggle. I mean, Fern blank Wilbur more than anything. Adored him, loved him, took care of him. I mean, even if she blank his milk, warmed up, perhaps she got out. I mean, that's a good question, especially if it's only one word. I'm not sure what it would be. When the school blank stopped in front of her house, okay, that's probably a bus. She jumped and ran out to the blank to fix another bottle for him. What does that have to do with the school bus? So that's kind of confusing, isn't it? So I think that's just saying how which words we choose definitely, or which words are the ones that are not understood can really affect our fluency. Thanks for indulging me on that. Effie, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that in the, like what you just said, which words impact the understanding when they're not read correctly. So here we have a three-legged stool because two would tip over and one would not stand at all, and this stool in particular. And so in your three-legged stool for fluency, it's not just all about accuracy as we see, it's just one leg of it. It's not all about the rate and automaticity. There's another leg. And then our third leg is one of our loved words, prosody, about the reading with expression. And we're going to talk a little bit more about prosody and reading the punctuation on the page to help build that automaticity altogether.
Thanks.
Is this a Jan Hasbrook?
No, this is a me.
you?
As we keep
Okay.
looking at what are the elements of fluency. Probably, I'm sure inspired by Jan. But it's just me.
I just remember her three-legged coaching, three-legged stool, but that might have been through coaching. That might have been about coaching.
I've used the three-legged stool for special education. I realized, oh yeah, let's use it for this too. It works. This is you'll notice these two paragraphs. Someone italicized the top one. Has the top one would be if you were reading the bottom paragraph, but making some errors. So I'm just going to give you a moment to read that and think how, I love it, Angela. Yes, there's no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact that you can't read the words. So let's look, if you were reading the paragraph like the top, how would that affect your understanding? If you read accurate as acute. If you read every time a reader misreads, if you read misrides instead.
I didn't even notice it said misrides. I automatically, my brain changed it to misreads.
If students cannot realize words instead of read, they will almost always have different with compression. It's totally changing your understanding, doesn't it? Again, thinking about which words are the ones that you're not understanding. Just an example of accuracy. We think about how accurate is accurate enough. To me, it depends on which ones. I mean, if especially our kids with dyslexia will often struggle with the pronouns which does affect comprehension, or they'll struggle with the prepositions, may or may not. They'll definitely struggle with our articles. And if it's or the, may or may not really affect comprehension. And sometimes their errors will be close, but these are the kinds of errors. I mean, it's not like they're saying horse for pony. They're saying compression for comprehension. So this is a phonological error, not a syntactic or semantical one. Sorry, semantic. So it really changes the understanding of meaning. And then we wonder why they struggle understanding, right? This one is my inclusion because, again, thinking about earlier, we saw how syntax is the bridge. I'm taking this further, saying that automaticity is what gets us from decoding those individual words to our comprehension. And I'm going to make sure that I've got this in the right place. Comprehension, that doesn't feel like it's in the right place. So that's going to be later on. This is one that I took from another one, and I think that things got translated wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah, I need to
it
fix
moved around.
the syntax and phrases comes with the automaticity. So I'll fix that. I'll look for a better one while you're in the breakout rooms. But the idea is that the automaticity is if you can't read these words automatically, then you're going to struggle to put them into those phrases and read those smoothly so that you can understand the whole thing. I'll go look and find the original with this one while you go on, Neffy.
And this slide, I feel like may be familiar, that we've seen this before in our work, that automatic word recognition, decoding words is not enough. Just seeing and hearing words simultaneously does not lead to automatic word recognition. That decoding, sounding out words, and that orthographic mapping that we've discussed before is what leads to the automatic word recognition. So I'm going to look at some of Alicia's notes here, and thinking about Nancy Young's ladder for reading, and that some kids really need this very explicit word recognition work, and we need to be cognizant of that. And it may seem like they're developing automaticity, but there's really a process that goes on to get them there, and that we don't realize that orthographic mapping is actually happening to keep that in that memory, to go back to that rope where that automaticity blends together.
You'll need to click a few more times so we can pull all that up for them. There you go. And that's where the orthographic.
Oh, that's where the orthographic mapping. I just added it without. I just kept talking.
Without the
I
visual.
jumped to the third one without it visually being there. In my head, it was there.
Well, this is where we say it's not just enough to do the site, to do flashcards or to do a lot of reading. We need to be doing the spelling and the connections of those sounds and symbols together as well. Mm-hmm.
I was, that I was reading something about this work and how even those sight words that we say are sight words you can't sound out, there are cues on how to support that. So like even the word said, we do know that the first sound and the last sound actually match up. It's that middle sound we have to
Appreciate that.
work at and change and understand, instead of just saying you need to memorize how this word, you just need to learn it, which
So
often,
many
for
words.
a long time was the instruction for the word said. You just got to learn it.
Well, and said is I love how you chose that one, because it's an example of a word where if you look at relationships, that said is the past of say, like paid and laid, which are spelled the same way, are the past of pay and lay. And it's just the pronunciation is weird, but it's awfully hard for our mouths to say. In like paid, it's said.
Said.
You say this. It sounds funny, and you might feel like you're talking like you live in Minnesota, but it's just simply our language change. And that you're right. I mean, so many of our words have something, even a natural piece that is. All of them will have some kind of sound symbol correspondence that's regular.
Okay, here is our fun word prosody. Thinking about pitch and intonation, how we're reading and the stress patterns of certain sounds, and the duration of, what do they mean by duration? Could you go?
Like how long you might hold a word.
Hold, okay.
So if you say something really quickly, or if you say it.
Oh, okay. He
catch
was,
it. Mhm.
it was he was running and it was very abrupt in the, okay, the kind of the rhythm
Mhm.
of the patterns of the words, and the pitch and intonation. I often say that the American Girl stories I just found really dull and boring when I was a parent of a young girl with half the age that she is now, at about when she was about 8 years old and 10, and she was reading these books, but she could read them aloud to me with pitch and intonation because she'd been in theater and with expression. And I was like, wow, it's actually interesting. These girls that are just so nice and don't do anything really very mischievous very often. You're making this very interesting, but it was because of her prosody and having that experience with theater that she was reading things that otherwise would be less interesting. So that is something that I stuck with me as a teacher. We all know, like, read alouds and we can make them fun, or engage kids in learning about text, but it's that how it's done is it can really, even for high school and middle school kids, be more engaging when it's read in that kind of manner.
So Effie, I found the one with the bridge, and it did actually look like how we had it. And I'm just, I think I'm looking into the notes and realizing why I had it the way I did. Was that
Okay.
So decoding is accuracy, it's getting it right. And prosody is the result of being able to understand those words you're reading. So hence comprehending those individual words and then seeing how they fit with other words. That's our syntax and phrases. So it's a result of both knowing those individual words, decoding them automatically, and then allowing comprehension can happen when you understand those words and how they work in relations with other words. So hence that's the fluency piece of those sentences and passages, which allow for the prosody. It's complex. I mean, I should have comprehension there and again, because there's comprehending individual words, and then there's comprehension how those words are working together. But reading is complex. The reason why I have these examples of present and present, conduct and conduct is, though, notice how those are two different things. I'm going to present you with a present, or I live in the present, versus I want him to conduct himself, or his conduct is not working for me. So notice that stress and intonation, and this is, I mean, if you think of even just the word hi, could you say hi, hi, hi? I mean, that prosody is a piece that is so much harder to measure as we're reading orally, but it really affects my understanding, because this is where, especially for our kids with autism or who struggle with the implicit piece, is what's not in the text, what's not in the words, what are the pieces that are implied. So if I say how he said it, if I said it begrudgingly, or if I said it excitedly, those are those pieces that come out in our prosody.
And that makes me connect with those words being like tier 2 words.
Mhm.
In our work around vocabulary, when you have tier 1 words, your basic words, and you think that being like present might be a tier 1 word, but because it has multiple meanings and is spoken, can be read differently, it would move into a tier 2 level potentially and have to be explicitly taught to students. Sometimes with some of these words that come naturally for us when we see them in text, and they don't seem that complex, are actually more complex than actual vocabulary words that we end up explicitly teaching that are tier 3 words.
Mhm. Definitely.
Okay, this takes me back. I looked at this chart. So how many of you are I don't want to use the word old, but previous Dibbles users like myself from 6th edition back in the day. And we used this. So it has here the University of Oregon tagged in it. And so looking at that 50th percentile, and that was usually our goals.
Yay. I'm
But-
thrilled to hear you say that because as one of the things that I heard Jan Hasbrook talk about is people see this and they say, okay, my goal needs to be the 90th percentile. And that is way too fast. You lose comprehension when you go too quickly.
Yep, we always, and this seems higher than, well, let's see. It is a little higher than it was in the mid 2000s. It seems like there's been an adjustment, I believe.
There has been a slight adjustment. This is the 2017 version. And although we only put 1 through 6 here, and I have to find and her chart does go through 8th grade. And I will say for the high school teachers with us, when I did my dissertation, it was with high school kids. So I looked for high school version of this and I could not find one. And I think that Jan Hasbrook has said it. In fact, I can ask her tomorrow because she's speaking tomorrow morning. But I think that at the time that she had said that there hasn't been a lot of research on the high school version. And that frankly, if you can read at that, I look at some of these numbers, if you can read 100 words per minute, you're pretty good. So I'm kind of surprised to hear her say that when I look at these really, really high numbers in these. I mean, look at 204 for 6th graders. And you may lose comprehension if you go too much more than 100. So I think that once you get to that 6th grade reading level, which we know that a lot of, newspapers are usually written at a 6th grade reading level, that if you can get to that, you're probably going to at least have a baseline and not struggle too much. Like I said, it does go through the 8th grade. I did find one from Florida years ago that was a high school numbers, but I haven't been able to find it again. So if I find it again, I'll let you know, but it's not as well known as this.
And be sure that one thing I always used to do is I always kept the spring goal in mind, but where are we headed? What's our plan to get there? But then focused on, for the teachers I work with, really to break it down so it wasn't so daunting, looking at your fall benchmark goal, looking at your winter, and then the spring. And when you start breaking it down, and there was a formula to use for this, but thinking about, or there was a chart that was about how, from Vanderbilt, I believe, on how fast the growth is. And when you start, the older the students are, it's like 0.8 words per week is expected growth. And then there was ambitious growth. It was like 1 word a week. And so when you start really breaking it down and you have 38 weeks or so in a school year, 37, and start breaking it down by that, how are we, building our word experiences and retention by just a couple words a week? And that really helped teachers understand, like, okay, I can do this. We can do this. Kids can do this.
I just found and put in the chat box the oral reading fluency norms, which go through 5th grade.
Okay.
Sorry, it's 8th grade.
That's great.
Secondary. I just misspoke.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No, but I'm going to add to our guide. Go ahead.
Okay, here is your prosody rubric. So I just want you to take a couple minutes, and I don't want to rush you through it. Take a couple minutes and read through the rubric. And picture students as you're reading through it.
I'll get the link for that as well, which wasn't in this. This comes from Tim Rosinski. I'll stop talking while people read.
Mhm.
He does have resources for high school or at least secondary. I don't remember if it was just high school that I'll pull for us as well.
What I like about this also is with something like this where you can print it off or electronically use it very asset based in thinking about what can the student do, what are they doing, where are they, and what do I need to help them with next. So I'm just wondering, like, how, if there might be areas that that are easier to focus on than others, and then thinking about what strategies can be done to help with, I'm looking at number 2 and phrasing. Frequently reads in 2 to 3 word phrases, giving the impression of choppy reading. Improper stress intonation, fails to mark ends of sentences with clauses. So, what can I do as an instructor to provide practice, to provide modeling, to help support that, which in turn, when that is supported and that improves, the next smoothness will also improve with those rough spots. And then not pushing them in the pace, but focusing on the other areas, and the pace will come with practice in the other things, areas, because we get caught up in the past, like I said, with the fluency in the pace, when it's all these other pieces that are actually, and then it helps you dig deeper too. Well, why aren't they reading smoothly? Well, maybe we need some decoding practice or work in specific areas, and targeting where are those rough spots. There's so much that can be done with this if we had, some kids with us and some practice and kind of a lab to kind of play with this, which you most all of you have. So you have your own classrooms and schools as labs.
Okay,
Okay.
move on. So some key takeaways. These were from Elizabeth attended a webinar by Jan Hasbrook, and these are three things that she pulled out that I think are really kind of keys. Number one, listen to your students reading. Like, how do they get a chance to do that? I worked with I think she was a sixth grade teacher who said, well, I don't hear my kids read. I thought, how do you know they can? So, I mean, I know that's harder as with our older kids. Those of you who teach special education, it's a little bit easier to make sure that we touch on all those pieces. But I like this too, that we're reading fluency. It's a thermometer. It tells there may be a possible reading problem, but it doesn't say why. So maybe it's the accuracy, maybe it's the automaticity. And if it is the accuracy, let's look at the decoding. Let's keep digging down into what's going on here. If they're accurate but not automatic, let's work on building that automaticity. And of course, that reading well is the goal, not the fast.
Yeah, listen to your students read. That's a big piece that with the invention of more assessments done by the computer, there's less and less of teachers listening to students read. So it is so important. And there's so many ways to help creatively think about when and to do that and how to do it. So I can't stress that enough. All right.
I have just one suggestion.
Mhm.
Our groups, like when we think about this, like prosody with kids, especially with intervention, we have teachers that will do readers theater on purpose, and they go over it and over it and over it, and they practice their script, and they have to get in character. do all these things. And then amazingly enough, if they get that 3 to 6 week intervention with Readers Theater, it's amazing how they will try to read after that because they know what it's supposed to sound like.
Right.
And it's like sometimes it's a simple thing, like just a play, right? Like
Yep.
getting them into character and thinking about what would be happening. And that helps with the understanding when we talk about them later with prosody, then it makes more sense.
It makes sense. You've laid
Sorry, go
that
ahead.
foundation, and they're more willing to reread something over and over and over when it's in that format than saying, hey, can you read this 26 times to me? They're gonna do it and feel pride in it. And how fun is that your intervention is reading a play? I mean, that makes me happy.
Oh, Stacy, I'm so sorry you had to do Romeo and Juliet, but she said, even your worst readers and are reading out loud. It's good that they hear the peers read and realize that everyone struggles. Yes. So that someone's reading like a robot, and Shakespeare's hard. And this is where it's so important to listen to it too. Let's get into the rhythm of it. Let's get into the cadence, because there is a rhythm, especially with Shakespeare and his iambic pentameter.
Yeah, we've watched different versions of the movie. We've used the graphic novel. We've had them read the script, and the students who struggle to read, we give the small parts to, and unless they want a bigger part, and they're more than welcome to. But I think it builds their confidence. I mean, I'm seeing that kids across the board are struggling to read, as they just don't read as much anymore.
Mhm.
But it builds their confidence to hear that other kids are struggling. Not that everybody should struggle, but they're like, I like to point out, you're not that far off.
Thank you, Ruthie. I appreciate that. Both of your examples made me think of when I used to teach high school. I coached speech and debate, and that, especially an dramatic interpretive piece, got to feel the emotion and put the feeling into it. And that's definitely, as we think about that expression.
And that choppiness, it's interesting because sometimes students will think their rate is going to be faster if they're reading really fast and they're reading this choppy. And then once you model, I'm going to read what you just read, and I want you to listen to me and my voice, and you slow it down and you read, but you read it smoothly, and you get more words than they did reading it choppy. They're like, oh, it's like, okay. I'm like, yeah, we can't take breaths after every word. So phrase cued reading and breaking them into phrases, and showing kids how to do that can be a powerful strategy too.
Definitely.
Okay, stop. Don't guess. Sound it out. Decoding. Slow. Develop accuracy with our orthographic mapping. And here's our fast, the automaticity. So that's just a visual, the repeated practice. So we're not saying fast, like fast, but faster, to go with that, the gauge we have with the actual research behind it on rate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and on the strategic piece, what do we mean? So making sure that our students are understanding the different levels. So not just the surface code, but also looking at the meaning from the text base, understanding how these units of meaning are working together, and then whether or not they're creating a mental model. And so that's one of the pieces that can you visualize it? So many interventions for comprehension, they think about visualizing, verbalizing, integrating those units of meaning, looking at how are those words working together to let's make sure we think about the different levels of understanding. I'm sure you've seen those images of the surface and or the deep, different kinds of understanding of different levels. Looking into the other areas, anything we missed on that, Effie?
It says here in the notes from the Reading Comprehension Blueprint by Nancy Lewis Hennessy. So,
and on the next one are some example strategies that came from, this was from the Big Dippers. So I'm going to go ahead and cite where she got this. And then just an engagement opportunity is what else would you add to this? We added the adding notes and annotations 1 through 6 were on from the Big Dippers, and we thought, what about adding notes? What are annotations? I tend to use as I'm reading something, and I started this probably high school, maybe college, but put a little triangle for me means definition, or a little percent symbol means that there's an example. So finding some little shorthand to cue yourself so that you are annotating in a quick way as you're reading, something that will kind of remind you this is what you were thinking of here.
So,
Anything to add?
yeah,
Mhm.
thinking about that and what would you add? And I know we've had a lot of conversations with different groups about monitoring, clarifying, and fixing up and what that means, and many of us that have been around for a while and what fix up really is. And where were we the other day when I was at a school, an alternative high school, and the conversation came up about summarizing, and that so often they jump to it being a written summary and thinking about it as a reading summary, which would be a oral summary, then taking it to written. So that retelling and summarizing, and not always just jumping to the written standard, but the reading standard of summarizing.
Mhm, mhm.
That's good.
Okay. So I think that takes us into we did have a plan for a reflecting time, but I think what we're going to do in interest of time is, sorry, no, there was one more. Oh, I love this piece of, as we're shifting and talking about moving toward the science of reading, this shift is discussing complex knowledge text sets, that's hard to say, and thinking about that common misconception of we teach the reader, not the text, that teaching comprehension strategies leads to reading comprehension, but the real point is teaching people to be strategic. And so thinking about how we it's not just those strategies, but it's really understanding the text and building your background knowledge that can, and recognizing that we do read different things in different ways and using those different strategies appropriately. As Effie was saying, that her life is a Venn diagram. It's what's going to be the best use for this, what I'm learning right now for this text. It's a relationship between the text and the reader.
And this is from Massachusetts, and Alicia introduced me to this, and I put the link in the chat.
Some more resources for you. So we're going to, I'd like you to think to yourself on this, and you can have your conversation about this while you're doing your exercises. So we're going to queue up both. So we'll just Effie, if you want to jump to the slide that's talking about, jump us to slide 51, and we'll explain the different options for engagement for practice time, and we'll combine your reflection time with your practice time. So we do have in the Jamboard on frame 5 some misconceptions that have been said about fluency. So that can be contributing to your conversation. So if you'd like to talk about fluency, and then regarding strategic part of our discussion is we want you to talk about the think aloud opportunity, or the think aloud strategy that we use as teachers. And I'm going to put a link to that into the chat box. Thank you. And to think about how do we model who we are as readers, and how we use strategies to monitor and fix our comprehension, to recognize when we have clicks and clunks, or recognize when something's going well or not going well. So what do we do as readers, and how do we model that to our students? Or how do you help your students model that for each other? So I'm going to pause the recording again. I'm going to give you a moment to get anything out of the chat box that you want for your conversation. And particularly because I see that we are getting closer to 5:30, I want to make sure that, there's pause recording. Here we go. So we can contribute to the conversation. The room I talked about had a good reminder on the repeated reading strategy, so that we are getting the students opportunities to build their fluency. There was also the question of, would we still read them in high school? And my answer is definitely yes. It's modeling, but it's also stretching them and exposing them to vocabulary and grammatical structures that they might struggle with on their own. So I definitely think that regardless of if you have strong readers or weak readers, they still like being read to, even when they're big kids. And there's definitely advantages to it as well. How about some of the other groups? Or something from the group that I joined that you talked about before I got there?
Well, we were saying, oh, does someone else want to go? Someone else
No,
wants
I
to
was just
go?
trying to see how many groups there were. Were there 3?
I think
Are there
so.
3?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we were saying it's so true. I've been, teaching now for 14 years. Can't believe it's been that long. Now I feel old. Anyways, but like I've done so many fluency readings with kids, like timings, and like it's like when the kids see the timer, they just correlate like, okay, it's about speed, and then like they may be reading like someone in my group was saying like one of her students on her caseload, she's a bed teacher, was like could read like 140 words per minute, but then when you like ask him, okay, like what did you just read, he has no idea, because it's not like you're not giving your brain enough time to process what you're reading. And part of like learning how to read is reading so you can eventually like comprehend what you're reading, but we're pushing like like how many like correct words per minute can you read, so much that we forget to teach the kids like that it's not necessarily about like how many correct words per minute you can read. And then if you just ask them like what do you just read, and they can't like recall anything they just read, it's about like reading with the with expression and like comprehension, and that's not like correlated with, oh yeah I can read 140 words per minute, but then the kid
That's
like
not
has
the
no
goal.
idea what they just read. So really like reminding kids and I've had to do this plenty of times with the reading passage where I'm like, okay, stop, we're starting over again, you need to slow down. And I'll model like I'll read it really quickly, then I'll ask the student like what did I just read? And they're like, I have no idea what you just read. But then I slow down and I stop at the commas, like in appropriate places and all that. And then I ask them again, like, okay, so like what was this like short passage about that I just read? And then they're able to tell me like, okay, it's about like kids going to a bar and playing baseball or whatever.
Right. That modeling is
So-
really important and crucial. Thanks, Leah.
Yeah, you're
How
welcome.
about someone from the other group, one of the other groups? Or somebody else from Leah's who would like to add on?
Well, I was in with Battleground and we were talking about the Hasbrook rate, and do all kids need to be, read with for that 1 minute timing and the rate, and talking about at secondary level, if you're listening to kids read, and not everybody has to have a 1 minute timing per se, that your kids that need it, and the way you need to dig deeper, and how I shared about when we used to 4-box sort, and which kids are falling into accurate and fluent, and which ones are inaccurate and fluent, and getting that data to know where you're going to target is what's important. Not, so much that timer, and that timer is like a snapshot. Like I was sharing that last week I was in a classroom, within 10 minutes, I knew what I was going to share with the teacher. I didn't need a full hour observation. So same thing. I don't need to read a whole passage with a student to know. I need a snippet if I'm proficient at thinking about what text should sound like and what my students should be able to do. So it's not the timer so much. It's that it's a short snippet of the reading.
That's a great segue into the question I was going to ask everyone is if people took a look into the Jamboard. I see many of you on it. And actually I could do a quick sharing jump to it. And looking at that common misconceptions list, because I think Effie, what you were talking about is the fact that these oral reading fluency measures, the misconception that it measures fluency, which you would think it does because of the title, but in reality, it is measuring. Let me go back to portion of screen, see if I can grab it again. There we go. in reality, it's not measuring fluency. Those oral read, usually when we do an oral reading fluency, it's just measuring, I know I'm trying to get the whole thing here for us. Rate, not actual, I mean, fluency is so much more than rate. So I'm wondering if anybody had any conversation about this in your groups. Or if there are any thoughts on it before we wrap up.
I guess it goes back to what I said as I was looking at this. I mean, this is exactly what we were saying, that a higher or reading fluency score is not always like better. You ask them what they just read and they look at you like, I have no idea what I just read.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's where that
Yeah.
prosody, paying attention to what it's sounding like. You can understand if kids are understanding the text sometimes by how they read the words. If they're word calling, they're less likely to be understanding, but if they're reading with that intonation and expression, they're pulling in that vocabulary through their reading. If it says, you know, she exclaimed versus said, and how that's going to be more exciting way of communicating. I just put the Glean, we talked about the Glean fluency module because we were talking about this is available K-12 or across the state, any educator, para educators as well. And Battleground's been kind of my rock star in Glean participation, but it isn't just for elementary. There is a fluency module in there, and you can glean something from it. So there you have it. And it's time for me to end my day.
I noticed
when I'm pulling words in like that. So that is something there, and it's free clock hours. It's all asynchronous, and you can pick and choose what you want to do.
So toward that end, as we ask that you look forward to this next series or our last time together, Effie has made a survey that we're going to put into the chat box for you. So to ask for some input from you on how can we make sure that our last session is meeting your needs as much as possible. These are some of those images of what Effie had mentioned. There was the fluency one, is the third one over on the right. And there are some more upcoming events in May. There's a evidence-based curriculum review webinar by the Reading League in Washington. There's a structured literacy conference by Slingerland. Dr. Berninger and Dr. Kilpatrick will be there. There's the Joyful Literacy, and then there's the Science of Writing with Reed Waugh. So lots of exciting things going on. And I'm just going to jump to our contacts. Actually, we should, Effie, with as much as it's just you and you and I should be on the same one, but that's okay. We'll put all the resources together. I do want to not keep everyone. So we thank you. Effie, did you put the survey in?
Is it in our PowerPoint? I'm trying to find it I know we had it, and
You made it, dear.
It is. I didn't. My assistant made it. So
Did you find it?
here, literacy training, fill out Google Forms, copy. Let me see if
Let
this
me
is.
stop share. I'll see if I can find it too. So we do ask that you fill it out. What actually, you know what, too, Effie, why don't we send it out to all residents?
Yeah, let's just send it out through PD Enroller. Can we do that?
Yes, we'll do that.
Would you guys send out
Oh, I found it.
the resources you were just talking about too, Alicia? Would that
Yes.
be okay? Thank you.
All the resources are on. Do you mean about the upcoming events or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Oh, you know what I will do is I will put into our resource guide, which hopefully, did you get that already earlier?
Um,
I'll add,
I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll send it via email because it sounds like you're on a phone.
Okay. Thank you.
And what I will do is up at the top of our resource guide, I will put just a doc or link to my slide deck of all the upcoming events.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much.
And I found the link. I put it in there, and it'll look something like this. And it's just 2 questions. What have we not touched upon that you would like to address, and what topics would you like to revisit and go more in depth about? And we want to use that for planning for next month. So when we send it out again to you, we'll give you a date to get it to us by.